In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we are conducting this meeting online. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the meeting, the public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. Following the commissioner's discussion, the host will unmute all mics and you may make a comment. Please be brief in your comments and speeches will not be allowed. Following public comment, please mute your mic by clicking mute in the upper right corner of your photo. I just want to also say that we are recording this. If anyone out there is recording, please let us know let the chair know at this point. And also please note that Zoom, which is the company we're using here, they also record this. So if you don't wish your picture to be on the internet, you should take it off at this point. In order to preserve bandwidth, video screens will be turned off with the exception of the commission delia and those that need to be seen. All right, greetings all. We're here because of the virus, of course, and I think the commission needs to figure out whether anything needs to be done with our lands in terms of usage, whether it be parking or walking on trails, and I think we should open that discussion at this point. And at some point, it may be that we will have a vote to streamline any actions and potentially allow Delia or her designee, probably Marsha in line, to make a decision on our behalf, should we want to go in that direction. I open it up. Who's any of the commissioners that is, what have we seen out there? What are people thinking? I could go on my side, but I'd like to hear from others first. Ed, Lynn, anybody? Judy, yeah, please.
Yes, I've been walking on trails at Powder Mill, which is the one up around the Throw Club, Rifle Range, and a little bit at White Pond. I walk or bicycle there, so I don't drive my car. What I have found is that there are people there, but social distancing is definitely being practiced. People step off the trail, or I've stepped off the trail to maintain the 6 feet. So I feel that those properties, at least over the last 2-3 weeks that I've been going to them, things that people are being considerate and doing what they should be doing, with the one exception, and that is so far I've been the only person wearing a mask that I've noticed when I'm outside. So I think encouraging people that whenever they step out their door, they should wear a mask. And I would say the same thing, quite frankly, for walking around my neighborhood or walking on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, because I've observed, that's probably the area I've observed. I know that's not our purview. That's where I've observed the most people with the most difficulty in maintaining 6 feet distance. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment?
I think, I'll largely second you, Judy, except there are exceptions to that. I've seen a variety of behaviors. I think I'm slowly observing people getting the message, which is amazing, seeing as the message has been out there for a pretty significant period of time at this point. But people are spreading out more than I've seen, say, 2 weeks ago. People, in my personal experience, are stepping off the trails, stepping off the path, making way. But I also have seen certainly congregations of people, usually around parking, because everybody's getting out of their car in a tight space.
Ed, Nick, do you have any thoughts?
Yes, I did come across something, it was sent to me by NOFA earlier today that I forwarded to the commission members.
Yes.
And
yeah, go Nick.
It refers to a Dutch study indicating that for people walking and biking and other motion, in other forms of motion, that the separation distances should probably be much further than the 6 feet standard. I don't know what to do with that. there was no detail in the study that I noticed, so.
It sounded like what they were saying is they wanted you, if you passed by a fellow, you could be 6 feet apart, going in opposite directions. But if you were walking in the same direction, that they wanted it to be 15, 20, or 30 yards or something.
Yeah, and
I forget what
probably,
the number was.
probably very dependent on which way the wind is blowing too, from what it said. They're just concerned like a slipstream of particles might be behind a person. So it was just FYI that I sent it around, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I would appreciate Susan Rask's assessment of that study, because I've also heard that study is not universally agreed to in terms of the conclusions.
Yeah. Okay. Ed, you were going to say something?
Yeah, no, the only thing I've noticed, I was up in Town Forest a couple of times, a couple of the trails, and the one thing that I was surprised at is the lack of people putting dogs on leashes. Very surprised by that.
Well, I think we may, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just, if that could be underscored, because I was walking, there were 3 large dogs that 3 women were walking, and they were just totally out of control.
Yeah. You went down it. Yeah, you got frozen out there, Ed, or at least on my side. You're frozen, Ed, for some reason. Can everyone hear me? Shake your head up and down.
Yep.
Okay. For some reason, Ed, you're not coming through. Not coming through.
And it's strong. Yeah.
Okay.
There he is.
Maybe coming back.
There, that's better.
Yeah, that's much better. Also, I think distancing
Again,
is one issue. I think parking may be an issue that, and we do have the chief on board, thank heaven, and might get his input into this. There has been observed by myself, if no one else, considerable parking at some of the heavily used sites, and some of the parking was clearly outside of designated parking areas, and seems we need to get some policing, I guess, or whatever the word would be, in that regard. I don't know exactly what that would mean, but signage for sure. If we keep the parking open, we may need to do something there as well.
Well, let's see, so we're in a position here where
You froze.
We have a responsibility.
You're freezing. You're freezing, Lynn.
As
We'll come back to you, Lynn.
Can I just suggest, if you have other programs open on your computer, Judy suggested turning those off so that your bandwidth is improved.
Bandwidth may be hurting you.
Yeah, and the other thing I heard is that the way to best improve your local bandwidth is to turn off your video, your personal video into the program.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the thought here, just so everyone knows where we might be heading with this discussion, is that the town has taken some action, and maybe Stephen at some point can fill us in on how what that looks like. But the thought is, Delia and I have discussed, and I think you could put it up maybe now, Delia, is that we give authority to Delia and a successor, the authority to work with the town and synchronize a lot of the land usages, so we're all on the same page as what the town is doing. And rather than have delays of 2 days to get another meeting put together with town manager and the select board and everything, Delia could act on our behalf. So what we see, I think everyone can read up on the screen, is a thought that we could vote on, which would take this discussion directly to the professionals in terms of Susan at health and the chief and everything, and say what's best to do. What are people's thoughts on this? Commission, that is.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to some extent, it truncates a little bit of the discussion we could have on this, but I think that's the that's kind of the point of it, that we're a situation where we have to have the town be nimble in what they do, and I think this would do that. Stephen, do you want to open your mic and just, would that work for you?
Well, once I open my mic, you know how hard it is for me to close it. So
Okay, we can shut you off, pal.
yeah, careful what you wish for.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
First of all, thanks everybody for agreeing to meet. I think the big thing is, you know, there is a federal, state, and local declared state of emergency, or states of emergency, I guess. And so the authorities that are the additional authorities aren't really articulated under the Civil Defense Act. And even though I think I could argue, I think that the town doing this on its own could probably fall into that. It's obviously our overwhelming preference to have the Natural Resources Commission a part of the dialogue, be on board with what we're trying to do. And I think, part of the thing that gets a little frustrating for me is, the guidance in terms of the studies and what's right, what's wrong, some of that's been shifting. But the one thing that hasn't moved an inch is staying home is still the safest way and the best way to prevent community spread of the virus. And, the guidance on getting out and getting some fresh air has been clear as well. But I think my interpretation and seeing how that's done in other parts of the world is take a walk down your street versus getting in a car and driving someplace where there are the potential to be other people. I mean, the other day, Paris banned outdoor exercise because people really just weren't abiding by the social distancing. And I made this comment last night at the select board. The worst part, the most unfair part of all this is our decision making has only one goal, and that is stop the community spread so people can stay safe and healthy and we can get our lives back, which means our decision making is going to be geared towards addressing the few who aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, not the many who are really, staying home only for minimum need, only for essential errands, and they are being good about doing social distancing and, wearing the masks and doing the hygiene. It's the few people who aren't that we have to drive, that are going to drive the policymaking decisions, because the few can infect the many. And what we've seen is, and again, even if 75% of the time there aren't crowds and people are able to access these areas and have good spacing, we are going to manage this to deal with the 25%. And I wish it was different. I mean, that's not a great way to run the railroad in normal times, but it's what I think must be done in the times we're in. And so we want to have the ability to, and the courts are a good example of this. We closed nominally parks, playgrounds, courts a couple of weeks ago. And what we saw was people didn't care. The few that were ignoring social distancing just didn't seem to be interested in not playing basketball or not playing tennis or any of those other things. So we had to go out and then physically, lock them and physically close them. And then the other day, somebody cut the lock on the tennis court and they kept playing. And it's
Really?
Yeah. And it's like, and not to be that guy. I mean, I'm new here. I don't want to be that guy, but aren't people watching the news? Like, it's a pandemic. We want to end this as fast as possible. And as I started with, the way to do that has been the same since the very first day we started hearing about this. And so I know, and I think the biggest thing is people, even some of you have made your comments of the places that, that they've gone on hikes or run or biked the same route every day for years, and they want to be able to keep doing that. But we have to change our behaviors and routines. We're all working, most of us, I assume, are working from home. And so it may require a change in the routine for where you go and enjoy your open space as well. And I wish it weren't so, but I think if we're seeing this, it may need to happen. I will tell you that other communities are doing all these same things, and it's driven by the people who aren't respecting the rules.
Is that going to be a policing nightmare? Are we going to get 25%? I mean, I don't know, that would be a lot of folks. I don't think it's that high that are breaking the rules. Maybe it is. Is that going to be a nightmare if we try to shut everything down? We just going to be riding around? Is the chief's going to just have all his cruisers out there riding around, throwing people off the lands? I'm just asking. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're trying to do is just notify people that if we decide that we need to start closing parking areas, you know, and really the goal in that is to limit the number of people in these sites. Like the thing we've been trying to model is when Governor Baker closed parking lots, not beaches. Now, I think that has had mixed effectiveness as well when you see the people at Revere Beach all piled on top of each other, but it is a mid-range approach where, like, I don't know if it was Judy said she biked to the trail. If people can still do that, if you limit the parking, you can limit the number of people who are going, and you can also limit the people who aren't residents who are taking advantage of this as well. That's the goal, and I'll turn it over to Chief O'Connor about enforcement, but I think he and I view this similarly. It's really just getting compliance, not, you know, punishing people.
Just, Stephen, before we jump to the chief, if we gave Delia the ability to work directly with you and move at you know, one discussion, boom, get it done, would that work for you at this point?
Yeah, we just want to be able to act quickly,
right.
And like I said, and I hope it's clear. Maybe I'm a little cranky about this now here at the end of the week because it's been a busy week in terms of people giving us, like I said last night at the board meeting, we get feedback that we're not doing enough, and then we get feedback that we're doing too much. Which,
right, and that's going to happen.
As a longtime public administrator, that tells me maybe I'm in the right spot.
Yeah.
But we don't want to do this. We want people to stay home. And I think the biggest thing is, like I said, I think the meaning of getting out and getting some fresh air has been stretched out a little bit in certain cases, because it still is, stay home is still the best thing. You know, we want to get through this as quickly as possible, as I said. And, you know, nobody wants to do it, but I can see based on the reports we're getting, and like I said, Concord's not alone. I can see that this may be a need in the coming days if that small number of people don't start following the rules. And this is where having Delia and I be able, and the chief, and really, I sent the comment late, but Tom Judge is our emergency management director. He should be on the list as well as along with Susan Rask as well. So, if we just get together and say, listen, it's time, we just got to do this. That's perfect. And I think what's important is having your buy-in or blessing, so to speak, makes it really good, because then you can communicate with your friends and neighbors as to why, you know, this authority was granted and we'll communicate why we feel like we need to do it. Right.
Okay. I think we could bring the chief in, or we could just move to get this motion voted on and get that done and then continue the discussion, because I'd like to hear from Joan in terms of what you think the land trust might be doing. Just so we've had that discussion. I don't want to belabor this meeting any longer than absolutely necessary. But
Greg,
would that work? Yeah, so Judy, go ahead.
I have a question for Stephen, and that is, you know, when I listen to you speak, you're talking about the best thing is for people to stay home, and I absolutely agree with that. Do you assess just the authority to close the parking lots is sufficient, or do you foresee that you might need to close everything down? And should we consider extending this motion to include that?
Well, the motion would. The motion
those
would,
trails
Judy.
and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, Judy, I appreciate the question, and you know, I've teased that the ghost of Thoreau is going to haunt me no matter what we do here. But like I said, I think the governor's approach was a good, you know, a good balanced way to say, limit the number of people, but still have the opportunity there, as long as people observe good social distancing. But like I said, I think if you asked Charlie Baker today, if he would have just closed it all instead of just the parking lots, maybe he'd give you a different answer. But I think between messaging, and I'm going to do a code red call here this afternoon,
Good.
and I'll talk a little bit about this. But I think if with good messaging and knowing that we have the ability to do the parking lots, I mean, I really hope that gets us through. I don't want to be closing trails. I don't want to be in the position of saying we have to, like, you know, shelter in place in effect. Because I do think it's so, you know, I know how important these areas are to Concordians, and I know how important it is for people to manage their anxiety and mental health. You know, I walk around my neighborhood and I know how important that is to me during my day. And so that's kind of a last resort, I guess, is the short answer.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Yeah, Lynn, please.
Motion, if we'd like to take that.
I missed that. Lynn.
I have a motion.
Please do.
Would you like me to move?
Should we open this to public comment before we do this?
Well, I don't think our motion in this instance on an emergency basis is going to be.
It's not, yeah, I agree, but all
Informed?
right, because we will open to the public.
I would
Go ahead,
like.
make your motion. I like it. Let's
Yeah,
get this.
I
Oh, you froze again, kid.
would like to hear. Okay, better.
Better now.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So in the event that the town manager, police chief, and public health director deem closure of parking lots at conservation lands to be necessary to protect health and safety, I move to authorize the Natural Resources Director, Delia Kay, to act on behalf of the Concord Natural Resources Commission to close parking areas on conservation lands.
Second.
Judy seconded, or there were several seconds, but whatever. Any further discussion from the commission? Please, Stephen, you want to add the safety director?
Emergency management director, yeah.
Emergency management director. Would you amend your
Yeah.
motion, please, Lynn?
So amended to add the emergency management director.
We have a second. Any further discussion? It looks like Delia wants to say something. Unmute yourself.
Sorry,
Yeah,
yeah. So, Lynn, I just had a question. When you said in the motion to be necessary to protect health and safety.
Public health and safety.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that what you were
Yeah.
looking for? Yes.
Yes.
I may have faded out there.
Okay.
Stephen again, please.
Sorry, I don't know if it needs to be in this motion. I don't want to overthink it, but this only endures as long as the state of emergency is in effect. So
It doesn't say that. We had briefly, Stephen, talked about that, Delia and I offline, and thought that the commission can always, vote to take back their authority, at some point. But who knows when that ends? And that's a moving target, isn't it? Kind of. At some point.
for sure.
It seems to make sense that we will revisit this issue at a time uncertain at this moment, and I think we will affirmatively make another motion to, shut this down, or to revoke what we've done today because it's no longer deemed necessary. Seemed to be a better way, just because it changes so quickly and the time frame is completely unknown.
I mean, I do just, and I'm sorry, but I do envision a scenario where the states of emergency have been lifted and we still are required to do social distancing. I mean, I get,
That's kind of that.
Right.
You're going to want to Okay. So do you really want us to add that as long as the emergency is in effect?
No, it was more just a comment so people had it, so the commission and those observing have a sense of what the expectation on timing is. I just felt like it needed to be said, like this isn't an open-ended forever thing, but at the same time, there'll need to be some flexibility on the duration.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems that Delia at some point is going to bring to us the point that we're over this and we don't need this. She doesn't, you know.
Yep.
Yeah. Anything else? I'm not going to, the meeting isn't going to end, but I just want to get this vote. Okay, we're going to have to do this by roll call. What say you, Ed?
Aye.
Judy?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
Lynn?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. So that passed. The other thing we had talked about, but Delia, this is a question for you. We had talked about, and you had sent around just for people to look at, some signage. Given the fact that you're going to be working with the town, is that important for us to go through, or do you think that is something that you'd be working out with the town?
If the commission has any comments on what I sent around, that would be helpful. But I think we're working on some messaging internally.
Why don't we just throw that up on the screen for a moment so everyone in the audience can just quickly read it and see where we could have been heading, but I don't think we'll move on this. We'll leave it up to you folks. Can you do that, Delia, please?
Do you see that?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Sorry.
Greg, while she's queuing that up,
Yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
just a quick comment. So the content of the messaging that you're looking at now, I think is right on. But just, I think we're going to have a standard message for the town, not one for the town and one for conservation. So it may be parts of this. It may, all town messaging may be this, but we just haven't gotten that far.
Right, exactly. That's why I don't want to do anything with this other than just show. There are people out there, I think, from the public that may be wondering where we were thinking of going. And I thought it was wise just to show them. And I don't think we'll do anything with this today, but just show them so if we open this up, they will see that our intent was to try to work this out with folks, you know? So I think the one thing that people are going to have to understand, and I assume the town will do this, is if dogs are going to be allowed, they've got to be on leashes on all of our lands at this point, not just the few that we've restricted historically, that we can't have dogs running up to people. We don't know the status of the dog or the home it came from. I think that would be I'm just speaking for myself here now, guys. And, you know, that cars would have to park in their designated areas. And we had at one point talked about advising people, if I'm going to use Fairyland, where you go in and you go down around the pond, and obviously you can do the offshoots, but if you just go down around the pond and come back out, do we instruct people to, you know, where it's circular, you go in a clockwise fashion so you don't tend to walk by people. They'll be in front of you, you'll be behind them, and you can adjust your distances. Those kinds of things we've talked about. But does anybody else have any comments on this? I don't.
I guess the only thing that I took away from Stephen's comments is that, you know, I would read this and say, hey, come to our conservation lands. And I think, you know, inconsistent, and I know that it'll be written consistently with town message, is that our message really should be, you guys should be home and not out on conservation land. So that's my only comment when I look at that.
Yeah. Ed, anything? Lynn?
No, nothing else.
I guess we should open this up to any comments from the public, Delia. So I guess if you would unmute mics, and I would ask people if they have things to say, they must give their first and last names and where they live. And I would urge you to be brief because we really don't want speeches. Do I have any public comments?
I have a public comment.
Oh yeah,
You hear
I do
me?
want to hear from you, John, definitely.
Want to hear
Yeah.
now?
I can hear you. Loud.
Okay. Joan Ferguson, 62 Neshoba Road, Chair of the Concord Land Conservation Trust. The draft that Delia just put up, is that going to be posted? I ask this because everything the town does affects our land. So if you say all the dogs have to be on leashes, then we have to say that too, because otherwise our properties will get overrun with dogs off leash. And it's true for everything else that's going on here. And if the town closes conservation lands and then we need to follow suit, will the town also be willing to do whatever the same policing that they do on conservation lands on our land? Or for instance, I'm thinking specifically of, say, the Lowell Road parking area by Chamberlain Woods, that it's a parking area that cannot be easily closed off. There's no gate and chain, and it's not even particularly well defined. And so how would this new rule go into effect in an area like that?
Well, what you saw, that those regulations or signage, that was just something we were discussing and I want to see. So I wouldn't expect that is exactly what the town's going to put on all their lands. I think as Stephen said, he's going to collectively talk about this with folks and come up with signage that works for all the town lands. I'll drop it to Stephen to answer the question, or the chief, as to what happens if you guys want to follow suit and you end up being overrun by marauders. That's a policing issue.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, if I could just comment briefly.
Absolutely, please.
So I have the authority under the town traffic rules and regulations to post temporary no parking up to 30 days. And for example, in the area of the old rifle range, we just did that recently. Last weekend, there were cars parked on the corners and so forth, which make it difficult for people turning and bicyclists and so forth. So I have that authority and can do that in areas like Lowell Road. But I think the thing that people that are listening and for the commission is any type of policing action. What we want to get is voluntary compliance by people, and we do that through education. And on the dog issue, being unleashed, there are a number of different reasons, and I don't want to get into every single one because I think people understand, but if someone is bitten by a dog, that takes up not only resources of the police department, but of our medical facilities, which are very busy right now. So a lot of this stuff is common sense, and people that own dogs, I'm a former canine handler, and one of the things that we always talked about is the dog could always sense what's going on at the end of the lead. So if people are going into the woods because to relieve their anxiety, their dogs are feeling that as well. And they should have their dogs on a lead and control that, and be conscious of the other people in the community. People can social distance and use some very common sense, but listen to what the health leaders in the country are giving us for information. There is some conflicting information on different studies around the world, but there is we can all agree that there is some distance that we should all stay away from each other. And Stephen and I have talked at length about this. The best place is for people to be at home, but we do recognize that our conservation lands do bring some relief to some people in our community who do need to get out to relieve whatever anxiety or what other problems they may have. And there are others that are out there for the sake of enjoying the beauty of it, and people can make their own decisions, but we would like people to stay home.
Yeah. Anyone else out there in the public that wishes?
So sorry, Greg. I just want to touch base on the other part of that question,
Yeah,
which
go.
is to John's question. The trustees had put out, when they decided to reopen their sites, they put out guidance that we borrowed heavily from in ours. And so I think Delia has already committed to circulating whatever messaging we end up with to our partners. So there is some continuity there. I think we all have to approach this the same way, because we don't want adverse downstream impacts for other stakeholders. So yes, we will circulate that. We do. And I think if we are able, we will, and Delia, this is a wink, wink, nudge, nudge to you. We'll try and give advance notice that we're going to be posting things. And like I said, I think, I had a point, but now I've lost it. So, and I think, I did want to make one other comment, and then I will mute myself again, I promise. I know, I've heard from a number of people, both some here, but also on email, that, geez, I've been around, I haven't seen any problems. But I know we have received bona fide, credible reports of problems. And even if that's the vast minority of situations, I just want to reiterate, those are the situations that need to be addressed. And I just, like I said, we wouldn't even be bringing this up if we didn't think it was a legitimate problem.
Right. No, I actually have done 2 tours on 2 different sunny days, and although a lot of people are doing, fine, there's been significant parking issues in a few locations without question, and the people, I look at dogs just getting off leash and saying, okay, we didn't say to leash at this site, but we should at this point if we're going to allow the dog. So yeah, there has to be some rules and regs that narrow this whole thing down, in my opinion. But anyway, I just want to make sure we're not missing anybody in the public that wishes to throw their 2 cents. I see Susannah, I see Brooks, I see Christopher and Cynthia and Carlin. If you want to be heard, are they unmiked? I see their mics are restricted.
They have muted themselves.
Okay.
Everybody
Okay.
just.
I just
one
don't want
must-
somebody to. Is anybody have any follow-up? I think Joan's points about wanting continuity and getting enough notice, we'd have to make sure Land Trust was aware of what was going on, hopefully from my vantage point, but I'm sure Delia will do that. So I'm not too concerned about getting notice, Joan, but it may be stuff that you guys wished you didn't have to do, but I guess we all have to do things this day and age that we don't want to do.
Yeah. The only thing in terms of the dogs and leashes that might be confusing to people is that I know the Trails Committee did a wonderful job of putting out the Unleash Here signs that are a distance from the parking lots per what we had implemented a few years ago.
Yeah.
And that just may be confusing to people. I don't know how we address it, but
Well, she may have to go put some,
Maybe we could put bags over those
I was
signs.
just going
Yeah,
to say, put some
right.
bags over it.
Yeah.
All right, well, if this is the reason we came here, I think we've done what our task is. If anyone else, Mike, I see you. Thank you, Chief, very much for taking the time out and doing this.
Welcome.
We're all working at this, and Stephen, onward and upward, I guess. Do I have a motion?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Oh, I
Aye.
can't do it that way. Ed, say aye,
Aye.
please. Judy,
Aye.
Lynn,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
and I will say aye as well. Thank you all very, very much. I appreciate it. It's a great town, and we work it out together, and we'll keep at it. Thank you guys very much.
Thanks, Greg.
Have a
Thanks,
great
Peter.
holiday weekend.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, please, please. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Take care.